My name is Anastasia Rhine, and I'm 37 years old. 7 years ago, my younger sister Monica told my parents that I'd abandoned my medical residency because I was too emotionally unstable to handle the pressure. That single lie cost me my entire family. They cut me off. They blocked my number. They skipped my graduation from one of the most competitive anesthesiology programs in the country. Then, last month, Monica collapsed during surgery with a ruptured appendix, and I was the only one in the operating room who could save her life. If this resonates with you, if you've ever been the person who gave everything and got nothing in return, I need you to know that what follows is the truth. I wasn't always the invisible daughter. I was just born first, which in a family like mine meant I was expected to be invisible. My mother had gotten pregnant at 22 before she'd figured out who she was supposed to be. I think she spent my entire childhood resenting me for that. My father was kind enough, but he believed love was demonstrated through provision, not presence. Monica was born 4 years later, and when she arrived, something shifted. She was beautiful in a way that made people stop in the grocery store. While I was doing science fair projects that nobody attended, Monica was being driven to pageants where my parents sat in the front row, beaming. I learned early that excellence for me was not a ticket to anything. It was just what was expected and then forgotten. In middle school, I came home with straight A's and placed them on the kitchen counter, where they stayed for approximately 3 minutes before being moved to make room for the mail. In high school, I volunteered at the hospital, worked part-time, and maintained a 4 GPA while Monica did the minimum and still somehow seemed like the family's greatest achievement. The turning point came when I got accepted to medical school. I called my mother from the hospital where I'd been shadowing a physician. "Mom, I got in Johns Hopkins, full scholarship." There was a pause, not the good kind. "Oh, that's good, honey. Monica's on her way to nationals in debate. Her trophy case is getting too small." 7 words about my acceptance, a sentence about Monica's debate team. But something shifted in me that day. I made a decision that would hollow me out for the next 7 years. I would prove that I was worth seeing. I would work so hard that it would be impossible to ignore me. I called Monica that night, and she was the first person to really celebrate with me. She screamed, she cried, she said, "Oh my God, Anna, you're going to be an actual surgeon." And in that moment I felt seen, by her, and that made me want her approval even more than our parents. "We should get your acceptance photo," she said. "For Instagram, you look amazing right now, very accomplished." I told her everything, the grueling prerequisites, the research I was planning, the professors who'd mentioned my potential. I fed her ammunition because I thought I was building a bridge. I thought if Monica understood how important this was to me, she'd help me keep it in the family conversation. Instead, she was stockpiling weapons. Medical school was designed to break you. I was studying 18 hours a day, cutting into cadavers, discovering that I had a gift for seeing the problem and solving it with precision and compassion. During my 2nd year, I told Monica about something I'd struggled with in the 1st semester. I'd had a panic attack during my first exam. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't remember anything. It took 20 minutes before I could even stand up. "Did you see someone?" she asked. "Yeah, I went to the student health center, got diagnosed with situational anxiety. Medical school is literally designed to create panic." Monica nodded thoughtfully. She was 26 by then, working in marketing, and she had this way of making you feel like your problems were the most important thing in her world. "I'm really proud of you for getting help," she said. "That takes strength." I believed her. I told her about my doubts during clinical rotations. I told her about the day I almost quit because I'd lost a patient, a young man, 42, heart attack in the ER. I was building the architecture of my pain, brick by brick, and handing her every single one. When I got accepted into my anesthesiology residency, I'd been awake for 37 hours. The program director himself called me. They wanted me to start in the fall. They said I was one of the most promising candidates they'd seen in a decade. I called my parents first. My father said congratulations and asked how much it would cost them. My mother said she was sure it was very nice and that Monica had just gotten a promotion. I hung up and sat in my car and cried for the first time in 4 years. I called Monica next. She picked up immediately like she'd been waiting. "Big news?" she asked. "The best news." She knew what this meant to me. She said all the right things. She said I deserved it. She said I was brilliant. She said she was so proud of me that she could burst. 2 weeks later, my parents called a family dinner. I should have known something was wrong when my father suggested a family meeting. He didn't do meetings. We sat around the dining room table and my mother had made pot roast, which meant this was serious. My father cleared his throat. Your mother and I received a call today from Johns Hopkins. They wanted to confirm some information about your application. The anesthesiology program wanted to verify your mental health history. Specifically, they asked if you'd ever been treated for severe anxiety or psychological instability. My stomach dropped. The department chair said someone had called the program 2 weeks ago to ask about your mental health records. Monica did this, not a question. My father's face hardened. Don't blame your sister because you can't handle the truth about yourself. I had situational anxiety during medical school. It's common, it's not a disqualifying condition. You didn't tell us, my mother said, and I heard it clearly. You didn't tell us because you knew we wouldn't approve. I didn't tell you because it wasn't relevant to you. It's relevant when you're lying about your fitness for a position that involves life and death. I looked at my father. I have never lied about my qualifications. I was accepted into one of the most competitive programs in the country based on my merit. Monica said you've been talking about how everything is so hard and how nobody understands the pressure you're under, my father said, reading from a script that wasn't his own. Monica said you called her crying about losing a patient, that you were suicidal. I was never suicidal. I was grieving. There's a difference. Semantics, my mother said. I called 14 times over the next 5 days. The first 3 went to voicemail. The 4th rang once and then went to a message. This number is no longer in service. I sent 2 emails with attachments from my medical school health center explaining that I was cleared for practice. Both came back with read receipts but no response. I wrote a handwritten letter. My aunt called me 3 days later and said my mother had thrown it away without opening it. I found a mental health specialist and got a letter confirming that I had no ongoing mental health concerns and was fully capable of practicing medicine at the highest level. I sent it certified mail. My father returned it with refused written across the envelope. I got on a plane to see them 3 weeks before my residency was supposed to start. When I arrived, the door was locked and my key didn't work. I sat on the porch for 2 hours until my father came home. He looked at me like I was a stranger. If you're not ready to tell us the truth and get help, there's nothing for us to discuss, he said, and he went inside and locked the door. I drove back to the airport and never went back. Survival is a weird thing. I'd spent my entire life trying to be the daughter they could be proud of, and it turned out that the architecture of their approval was always rotten. My residency started in August, and I threw myself into it with reckless intensity. I volunteered for every shift. I stayed late. I became the resident that everyone wanted in the OR because I was precise and calm and made the hard calls look easy. I made friends with people who became my real family. My attending physician, Dr. Patricia Chen, noticed something was wrong and made me come to her office and sit on her couch while she asked me questions. My co-resident James invited me to his family's house for Thanksgiving. My mentor, Dr. Reeves, somehow understood that I was running from something without asking me to explain it. Trauma responses are like scar tissue, Dr. Reeves told me one night. They form to protect you, but eventually they can restrict your movement. You have to work with them, not against them. I built a life entirely separate from the life I'd been given. I got an apartment in the city. I adopted a cat named Kafka. I developed a reputation as someone who was brilliant and composed and slightly untouchable. I made enough money to stop worrying about money. It took 5 years before I could think about Monica without my chest tightening. It took 6 years before I went more than a month without checking if my parents had tried to contact me. It took 7 years before I almost believed that I was fine. The call came on a Tuesday during my afternoon clinic. I was reviewing anesthesia plans when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. Is this Anastasia Rhine? A man's voice, urgent, official. Yes. This is Dr. Marcus Hayes from Johns Hopkins Medical Center. We have a patient in our emergency department who lists you as her emergency contact. Monica Rhine. She's been brought in with acute abdominal pain. We need a next of kin to sign consent for emergency surgery. My body went into perfect crystalline focus. Tell me what you're seeing, I said. There was a pause. Are you a medical professional? I'm an anesthesiologist, tell me. He told me, acute appendicitis with signs of perforation, peritonitis, sepsis indicators. She needed surgery in the next 30 minutes or she'd be looking at organ failure within hours. She was conscious but in significant pain. She's asking for you, he said. She asked the triage nurse if we could call you. I was standing without remembering I'd stood. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I got there in 18 minutes. I drove like someone who was furious and terrified in equal measure. The whole drive I kept thinking, Monica lied about you. Monica took your family from you. Monica cost you 7 years, and underneath that, Monica is your sister and she's in surgery and she's scared. I went directly to pre-op. She was on a gurney, IV in her arm, her stomach distended, her face pale with pain. She saw me and her eyes filled with tears. Anna, she breathed. The professional part of me catalogued her vital signs. The human part stood frozen in the doorway. I need to scrub in, I told the surgical resident. It wasn't a request. You know the patient, he asked. She's my sister. I didn't ask permission. I walked to the surgical floor. I told the chief resident that I was taking over anesthesia on this case. I didn't explain why. I saw Monica one more time before I induced her. She grabbed my hand, and her grip was weak but desperate. I'm sorry, she whispered. Anna, I'm so... Sleep, I said, and I administered propofol and her eyes closed, and I was the one who held her in that space between consciousness and nothing. The surgery took 2 hours. I stood at the head of the table, my hand on her IV, monitoring her respiration, maintaining her anesthesia. I kept my face completely blank. I called out her vitals. I was a consummate professional. And inside, I was 7 years old again, crying on the kitchen floor because my achievement had been forgotten before the ink was dry. My parents showed up in the waiting room at 9 p.m. I was sitting in the surgical lounge, still in my scrubs, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. My mother's face went through 5 different expressions when she saw me. Shock, recognition, shame, the beginning of something like understanding. Anastasia, my father said, and it was the first time he'd said my name in 7 years. I stood up. I set down my coffee cup. I looked at them both with the same professional composure I'd maintained in the operating room. She's stable, I said. The appendix was perforated and there was significant inflammation. We got her in time. She'll need close monitoring for the next 24 hours, but she's going to make it. Did you, my mother started. Yes, I was her anesthesiologist. My father's eyes filled with tears. I called her twice, he said quietly. After we rejected you, I called her and told her she should reach out. I told her she should fix this, and she said you didn't want to hear from us. She said you were doing fine without us. She lied, I said. It wasn't angry, it was just factual. She lied about my mental health. She sabotaged my relationship with you, and then she let you believe that I was the one who'd chosen distance. Why would she, my mother started? Because she couldn't stand that I was succeeding at something she couldn't control. Because she needed to be the daughter you were proud of, and when that wasn't enough, she made me not exist. I looked at them both, really looked at them, and I realized something that was both devastating and clarifying. They hadn't known. They'd been manipulated by someone they trusted, and they'd chosen to believe the narrative because it fit their existing anxiety. I can't do this right now, I said. You can see her in recovery in about 30 minutes. She's going to be confused and in pain. She's going to need both of you. I walked away before they could respond. Monica woke up at midnight with a scream. That's what appendiceal pain sounds like when you're coming out of anesthesia. I walked to her room like I did this every day, like my sister hadn't spent 7 years being the person who destroyed me. It's okay, I said quietly. You're in the hospital, you had surgery, the pain will start to decrease. She focused on me, her pupils still dilated. Your name, I asked, and she responded correctly. My name, I asked, and she squinted at me. Anastasia. That's right, can you tell me what day it is? She answered the questions mechanically. When she tried to reach for my hand, I adjusted her IV line instead. When she started to cry, I increased her morphine without commentary. I need to talk to you, she said, her words slurring. About. Not now, you need to rest. We'll talk when you're lucid. But she couldn't let it go. Even drugged and barely conscious, she needed to fix this. I was jealous. You were, and Mom and Dad, Monica, you're on morphine. You're not thinking clearly. I ruined it. I ruined everything. I'm sorry, Anna, I looked at her face, swollen, exhausted, terrified, and I felt something crack inside my chest. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was something more complex. It was the recognition that she was also broken. She was also trying to survive in a family that didn't know how to love without scorekeeping. Go to sleep, I said, and I dimmed the lights and I left her there. The confrontation happened in the hospital cafeteria 3 days later. Monica was off pain medication and lucid. She'd asked for all of us, our parents, to sit down together. My mother looked like she hadn't slept. My father looked like a man rebuilding his entire understanding of reality. Monica looked like someone who'd been cracked open. I need to say this, Monica began, and her voice was steady. I've been in therapy since I went into the hospital. My therapist helped me understand what I did and why. You don't have to do this right now, my mother said. Yes, I do. Monica looked directly at me. 7 years ago, I was jealous of you. I've never said that to anyone, but it's true. You got accepted into medical school and everyone was talking about you. I was doing well, but I wasn't exceptional. I wasn't on a path to save lives, and something in me couldn't stand that you were becoming someone extraordinary while I was just ordinary. My father looked down at his hands. So when you told me about your anxiety, I saw an opportunity. I saw a way to make you less remarkable. I saw a way to put you back in the invisible role where you were supposed to be. And I did it. I called your program. I told them things you'd said and twisted them into things you'd never said. I told Mom and Dad that you'd said things that would terrify them, and they wanted to believe it because you were becoming someone they didn't recognize anymore. Monica, my mother started. I wasn't trying to help you. I was trying to destroy your success because I couldn't have mine alongside yours. I was trying to make us equal by making you small. And Anna, I am so sorry. The room was silent. I called you, I said quietly. 14 times I sent emails, I went to the house. I know. You could have told the truth any time. I know. You let me believe that I was crazy. You let me think that getting help made me less worthy of being a doctor. Monica's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to go back and be the sister you deserved. I looked at my parents. Did you call Johns Hopkins and verify anything? Did you do any independent research, or did you just accept what Monica said? My father's face crumpled. We called. They confirmed you'd disclosed the anxiety, that you'd been cleared for practice, that you were thriving in your program. But by then, we'd already built the narrative. And you didn't think to revisit that narrative when Monica conveniently wasn't around. We didn't want to look foolish, my mother said, and it was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. That broke something in me and rebuilt it differently. Foolishness, that's what it came down to. They'd chosen a story that protected their pride rather than risk admitting they'd made a mistake. I can't undo 7 years, I said. I can't go back and be the daughter you were willing to see. I can't make it so that I never had to figure out how to survive without you. That damage is permanent. Monica was crying silently. My mother was crying. My father looked like he'd aged a decade. But I can tell you that I forgave you a long time ago, I continued, because holding on to the anger was the only thing keeping me connected to you, and I couldn't survive that way. So I let you go. I built a life without you, and it's a good life. It's full of people who choose me every single day. People who see me and want to celebrate me. People who don't confuse love with control. I stood up. I'm going to check on Monica's discharge papers. Her vital signs are stable. She'll need someone to stay with her for at least a week. I'd recommend Mom, given the medication schedule. As I walked away, my mother called after me, Anastasia, please. I turned back. I'm not closing the door, but I'm the one who decides when it opens and on what conditions. For now, you need to focus on Monica. We can figure out the rest later. 3 months later, we had dinner, just the 4 of us. My mother had called me a week before and asked if it would be okay. I said yes, but only if we did it at my apartment, on my terms. My mother made the pot roast again. My father brought wine and said almost nothing. Monica brought her therapist's homework, a list of apologies organized by category and impact level. I'd asked her not to bring it, but she needed to do something. We sat around my small dinner table, the one I'd bought at an estate sale, the one that belonged to no family but mine, and we tried. It was awkward, it was uncomfortable. Nobody knew how to navigate a table where 7 years of absence was a fourth presence, but my mother kept passing the potatoes. My father asked me about a case, not to judge me, just to understand. Monica told a story about work and didn't make it about me. 4 plates, 4 people. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness in the way that word is usually meant. It was something smaller and more real. It was people trying. My father slowly began to ask permission before offering opinions. Is it okay if I say something? He'd ask. My mother slowly began to listen instead of fill silences with her own commentary. Monica slowly learned how to be proud of my accomplishments without making them about herself. The changes were imperfect. There were still moments where my father said something that made me hear his judgment underneath his words. There were still times when my mother tried to insert herself into my medical decisions. There was still a part of me that braced whenever Monica called, waiting for the heel turn that didn't come. But there was also this, my father attending my 5-year program celebration, my mother asking about my research with genuine curiosity, Monica calling me before announcing a promotion and asking if it was okay that she was doing well. I started seeing a therapist 6 months after Monica's surgery, not because I was broken, but because I realized I'd never processed what it meant to survive something that was supposed to destroy me. Dr. Richardson didn't offer false comfort. She asked careful questions. Do you think you've forgiven them? She asked me one afternoon. I think I've stopped needing them to apologize, I said. Is that the same thing? Is it? No, forgiveness is something you do for the other person. This is something I did for myself. I forgave them the way you forgive the weather for being cold. It's not a moral choice, it's just accepting that some things are what they are. And how does that feel? Free, I said. It feels like freedom. The truth about family is that it's not always a given. Some families are chosen. Some families grow in the cracks between disappointment and reconciliation. Mine is smaller than the one I was born into. It includes Dr. Chen, who checks in on me every month. It includes James and his family. It includes my parents and sister, but it's bounded by clear walls that we all respect. My mother asked me last month if I'd ever move back to their town, if I'd ever make our family my primary family again. No, I told her honestly. My primary family is the one I built. You're becoming part of my life again, but you're not the center of it. I'm not sure that's going to change. She looked hurt, but she didn't argue. She'd learned something in those years of silence, that love isn't a negotiation and people aren't bargaining chips. I'm 37 years old, and I've learned something that took me most of my life to understand. I'm not here to make my family proud. I'm not here to prove myself to people who didn't see me when I was trying. I'm here to be the best anesthesiologist I can be. I'm here to mentor residents who remind me of who I was. I'm here to build a life that's mine, not borrowed from someone else's expectations. The most important thing I ever did wasn't medicine, though I love it. The most important thing I ever did was stop waiting for my family to see me. I saw myself first. I chose myself first. And from that choice, everything else became possible. If you're waiting for someone to finally understand you, to finally see all the work you've done and all the person you've become, I want to tell you, don't. Don't wait for that recognition to make your life real. Don't let anyone else be the judge of your worth. See yourself, choose yourself. Build a life that doesn't depend on someone else's changed mind or reluctant apology. Maybe they'll come around, maybe they won't, but if you're already whole when they do, it won't matter as much, and that's where the real power lies. 4 plates, it's a start, but the meal was delicious and I made it myself.